Selamat sore, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera kepada teman-teman yang hadir dalam webinar hari ini. Selamat datang di seri webinar RDI terkait COVID-19. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to RDI COVID-19 webinar series. My name is Akino Tahir. I am a research fellow in RDI, and I will be your host for today. And today we will discuss about waste management from policy, environment, and technology perspective. But before we start, I'd like to introduce our organization, Resilience Development Initiative, or RDI. RDI is a global think tank based in Bandung, Indonesia, and we're focusing on sustainable development and resilience studies. In RDI, there are several research groups, as you can see in your screen right now, and there are about 87 fellows affiliated with RDI. They are located in about 20 countries. Today's webinar is from the Water and Waste Management Research Cluster. In the cluster, we focus on topics like water resources, floods and droughts, and also waste management. We have research on water conservation, security, and governance. We also have research on biogas in urban contexts, particularly from domestic waste, and also on electronic waste or e-waste. You can see some of the latest projects on your screen right now. Now, responding to COVID-19, RDI developed 4 working groups to contribute to the body of knowledge, especially in Indonesia. And one of them is on solid waste and wastewater management. The importance of proper waste management, which is very closely tied to public health, has been one of the center of the attention during the pandemic. There are some abnormalities observed in waste generation, not only in Indonesia, but also in neighboring countries such as Malaysia. This is especially true for medical waste, but major disruptions are also observed in the municipal waste management. So in this working group, we want to look at various things. For example, the policy gaps in waste management, the impacts of lifestyle changes due to the pandemic to the waste generation, and also the state-of-the-art waste technologies that may need to be accelerated due to the pandemic. So today we have 3 speakers who are ready to share their expertise with us. Everyone will have about 15 minutes to present, and then after that, we'll have the Q&A session. For viewers, you can ask questions through the link that our wonderful team members have provided in the chat room. Don't forget to write your name, your institution, and also to whom your question is addressed. Also, don't forget to fill out the presence form. The link is also available in the chat room. Those who opt for a certificate will receive it through email within a week or so. Right, so our first speaker is Dr. Akil Azizi. He is a lecturer at the Department of Environmental Engineering in Bakri University and a research assistant at the Korea Institute of Ocean Science and Technology in South Korea. He received his doctorate in marine biotechnology from the University of South Science and Technology, South Korea. Some of his research projects include bacterial colonization of microplastics in Jakarta Bay and microplastics pollution in the water and sediment of Jakarta Bay. Today, Dr. Akil will speak about the effects of COVID-19 outbreak on the environment. Now, Pak Akil, you have 15 minutes. Please be mindful of the bell, which means you have 2 more minutes left to wrap up your presentation. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Aquino, for the introduction and for the time. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank RDI for inviting me in this COVID-19 webinar series. Today, I'm going to talk about the effect of COVID-19 outbreak on the environment. Thanks. In this presentation, I would like to talk about 5 different major environmental aspects that had been affected by COVID-19 outbreak. The first and the second aspect would be the effect of COVID-19 on the energy and air pollution, which are very closely related to each other. The third aspect would be the effect of COVID-19 on the wildlife and habitat. And the last aspect would be the effect of COVID-19 on the waste. This last topic will be discussed in more detail by Professor Susana. Next. So for the introduction, as we know, for the past centuries, energy demand for fossil fuel has been increasing significantly. And this increase of this energy consumption, of course, has led to global environmental concern, which in particular is a pollution and greenhouse gas emission. This slide shows us that fossil fuel consumption mostly derive from three major sources, which is oil, coal, and gas. Next. Um, in here, we can see that the more fossil fuel consumed by a country, then the more that the country will generate the CO2 emission. This map also shows that China and USA are the two most responsible countries with the highest annual consumption and CO2 emission, which are closely related with the air pollution and the green gas house emission. Next. We could see here in more detail that China and USA are the two highest consumer of the three major sources of fossil fuel. The first one is oil, which is mostly used for vehicle and different type of transportation. And the second one is coal, which is mostly used for the power plant and industrial plant. And the third is the gas, which is also used for the power generation plant. Next. Now let's talk about the effect of COVID-19 outbreak on the energy consumption. One of the main energy consumption comes from the field of transportation. As we know that in order to minimize the rapid spread of COVID-19, many countries have implemented restrictions such as closing school, factories, office, etc. And also in many countries, government requests their citizens to stay at home as much as possible, as well as regulating travel restriction. And as a consequence, there has been a massive reduction in air traffic. For example, the number of European daily flight in March and April decreases by approximately 90% compared to the previous year. Next. Similarly, road transport activity has significantly reduced all over the world that occurred during the lockdown for each country. As we can see in the graph shows that the traffic reduction in several the world busy city during the lockdown compared to the traffic during the 2019. Next. Another main consumption of energy is used in industries and also in power plant, which are generated by oil and coal. And when we back to China and USA, this pandemic has caused the consumption of oil and coal in both countries to reduce by about 20 until 60% compared to 2019. Next. Now let's talk about the effect of COVID-19 outbreak on the environment, renewable energy. The COVID-19 pandemic also delayed the expansion progress of the renewable energy sector, especially considering the budget cuts of many government and companies' investment, which in many cases reallocate their budget and investment to more focus on a health-related sector. We can see here in the screen that China is the larger producer of solar panel or solar module, which is one of the application technology for renewable energy. As the outbreak impact China, the biggest manufacturing country of renewable energy, it's directly impact the supply chains of the renewable energy technology in the world. Next. Even though the expansion and the supply chains of renewable energy has been affected by COVID-19, However, there are some good news as the renewable energy demand increased significantly all over the world, as we can see on the graph. One of the indication is the increase of global electric car sales in 2020 compared to the previous year. Next. Now let's talk about the effect of COVID-19 outbreak on the air pollution, which is mostly indicated by the concentration of nitrogen dioxide and PM 2.5 or particulate matter 2.5. So following the outbreak by January 2020, Chinese government had shut down the local business and implement transport restriction. The satellite monitoring pollution for NASA has detected a marked decrease in airborne nitrogen dioxide after the shutdown, as we can see in the map. And for your information, nitrogen dioxide level is mostly emitted from burning fossil fuel in transport, in industry, and also in electricity generation, which make it strongly linked to the human activity. Next. Likewise, the nitrogen dioxide level in USA also had dropped dramatically during the pandemic compared to the average period from 2015 through 2019. Next. This satellite data also shows the reduction of nitrogen dioxide concentration in France and Italy, as we can see in the map before and after the outbreak. Next. As a report of IQ Air, an air quality technology company, 9 out of 10 major global cities in the world that impose COVID-19 shutdown measure PM 2.5 reduction of 25 until 60% compared to the same period last year. Next. So what effect will COVID-19 have on CO2 emission? As we know that CO2 emission causes the greenhouse gas emission. So it's been reported that if economy and the transport shutdown continue, it will lead to the first decrease in the global emission since 2008 global financial crisis. It also has been suggested that the COVID-19 pandemic can reduce CO2 emission by 1,600 million tons this year, which is about 5.5% or 6% of the total global emission in 2019. The question is whether this decreasing of CO2 emission immediately lead to the drop in the atmospheric level of CO2. Unfortunately not. Atmospheric CO2 level don't just depend on the CO2 emission from the human activity. They are also influenced by the how poor or how well the rest of the planet, like ocean or land, absorb the CO2. Next. So what we can conclude from this finding is that air pollution level have dropped significantly and contribute to global carbon emission reduction since measures such as quarantine and shutdown were put in place to contain COVID-19. But environmental benefit will only be temporarily unless we implement long-term measures to cut emission. Okay, next. Now let's talk about the effect of COVID-19 outbreak on the wildlife and habitat. As we know that the COVID-19 is zoonosis disease, which is infectious disease caused by the virus that jump from animal to human. Recently, Wildlife Conservation Society is urging government to ban live animal market and stop illegal trafficking and also poaching of wild animal. There are some report that China also has banned the trading and the consuming of wild animal. And the second effect of COVID-19 on the wildlife and habitat we can see in the screen from the picture. wildlife is running wild. It might be true that people might spot reports citing like puma in Santiago, Chile, or dolphin in Italy. However, there is no, or in the picture, it's like the wild goat running around in the whales. However, there is no scientific report showing the evidence that the presence of those animals is directly due to the pandemic. Okay, next. Okay, so the effect of COVID-19 outbreak on the wildlife and habitat, as we see on the screen, there are, as we know that the gloves, masks, and other personal protective equipment become far more widely used in public due to the pandemic. And unfortunately, because they are not always disposed properly, once they got into the water, and they might pose a threat to the marine environment and maybe potentially become another source of microplastic. And in regard to the conservation fund, this outbreak impact of reallocation of fund by donor from conservation to other like urgent health sector. Next. Now let's talk about the last major topic or major aspect of the effect of COVID-19 outbreak on the waste, which will be discussed more detail by Professor Susana after this. As we know that during pandemic, the medical waste is also on rise. It's been reported hospital in Wuhan produced average 240 ton of medical waste per day during the outbreak, compared to their previous average of less than 50 tons. And it's also happened in other countries like USA. Another environmental concern is the result of the pandemic. Countries such as USA has stopped recycling program in some of their cities, as the authority have been concerned about the risk of COVID-19 spreading in this recycling center. And some countries like in Europe, like Italy, they stopped or restricted the waste management. Like Italy has prohibited the infected resident from sorting their waste. Next. And this is the last slide. The quarantine policy, which is established in most countries, have led consumer to increase their demand for online shopping for home delivery. Consequently, organic waste generated from household has also increased. Also, food purchased online is shipped back. So our inorganic waste like a single-use plastic has also increased. Next. Okay, that's all my presentation today. Thank you very much for your attention. Back to Dr. Aquino.
Okay. Thank you very much, Pak Akil, for the presentation. It's been very interesting. Pak Akil provided us with a glimpse of the impacts of the pandemic to our environment, from the changes in energy consumption, or basically a major impact to the energy systems around the world, to the dramatic drop of global air pollution, the impact on wildlife and habitat, which I find really interesting, and of course on the waste generated from these changes. Now let's move on to the second speaker of the day, Ibu Profesor Suzana Yusuf. Ibu Susana is a professor at Chemical Engineering Department, University Teknologi Petronas, Malaysia, and some of her research awards include a Private Education Excellence Award in 2018, Malaysia's Research Star Award in 2017. She also received Top Research Scientist Malaysia in 2016 and Asia Research Award in 2012. Her research interest is in the application of chemical engineering fundamentals and principles in biomass conversion to fuel and biochemical, material development, and green processes. Today, she will speak about post-COVID-19 period for solid waste management from a technology perspective. Ibu Susana, you have 15 minutes. Please be mindful of the bell, which means you have 2 more minutes left to wrap up your presentation. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Bu Aquino. First and foremost, I would like to thank RDI for inviting me to share my perspective regarding the post-COVID era regarding the solid waste management. Next. So I will talk about how the COVID-19 has impacted the environment. So I will discuss upon the positive and the negative aspect of the effects of this COVID-19 towards the environment. Thank you. Next. So we know that the COVID-19, the initiation point, it emerged in late December 2019, and it has been spread all over the world, and it resulted in more than 500,000 of global deaths. So it's a serious pandemic in which serious things have to be taken upon in terms of what is the impact that it drives towards the environmental. And then we also have to see in a way that the positive aspect of it and also the negative impact of this pandemic towards the environment. So when we talk about the positive impact, as like Pak Ake has shared with us, we can see that how the greenhouse gas emissions has been reduced largely, and the particulate matters also being reduced, as well as the noxious gaseous emissions being reduced, and this will provide and leads us towards a healthy and positive environment. But in a way that we have to have a balance. If it is not being treated in terms of the waste management in a urgent manner, so this will generate an increase in waste generations, particularly the waste from the medical waste, packaging, and household waste. And then we can see also reduction in recycling, because examples, the disposable waste mass you cannot reuse. So these things have to be looked seriously and linked back to how technology can play a role in mitigating this phenomena. Okay, next. Right, so these slides have shown us that how we can see from the data that the change in the emissions of the gases, in this case the NOx, has been improved largely during the lockdown period, and also in terms of the impact towards the environment, be it in the rural area or industry perspective, or in urban or suburban. So a dramatic change in terms of these emissions of pollutants towards the environment being observed. It has been reduced when the human activities such as travelings being reduced, and in which this is very apparent worldwide. So examples in United States, we can see a positive impact in which 40% reductions in the domestic traveling, which pose a reduction in terms of the impact towards the environment pollution. And also we can observe in other countries, like in examples in Europe, due to the ban in traveling, also has provide a positive impact towards the environment in a way that less pollution is being observed there. Next. Okay, this slide shows us that can we imagine how much waste can be generated, and if unattended, this will lead to a negative impacts, a loss of pollutions towards the land. And if this waste, plastic waste, goes towards the oceans, and the habitat in the ocean also will get impacted. Thus, it's a very crucial that this waste being generated, being converted to something productive. So we can see that as the times goes by, this accumulations of waste is increasing, and human activity leads to this accumulations of waste if it's not being treated at point source. Next. So this slide shows examples of classifications of the plastic waste resources that can be turned into value-added material. So when we talk about waste, from the perspective of plastic types here, it can be ranging from low-density polyethylene, high-density polyethylene, polypropylene. So you can have polystyrene and PVC, PET, and others. So meaning that we have different grades of waste or plastic waste being generated, and the large contributions of these sections of the waste, you can see here the LDPE is the majority portions of it, and then followed by the high density polyethylene. So, and this, where it comes from, so we can see that it comes from many sectors, from packaging sectors and also from consumer products, so and from other industry, medical waste. So meaning that the source of waste is many and various types. Thus, we have to have technologies that can cater and convert this type of waste to a value-added material. Next. I will share in the next slide is what is the definitions of the solid waste system, and I will share about the case study and the technologies that we can apply to help to convert the waste to value-added products. Next. From definitions of Malaysia Act related to solid waste and public cleansing management, Act 2007, solid waste is defined as any scrap materials or other unwanted surplus substance or rejected products from the applications of any processes. And also it defines it as a substance, okay, that you want to dispose of due to the nature of it, and also materials that according to this act and related process. So by definitions, having firm understandings of these definitions, and we are clear on what are the elements that being classified under the solid waste boundaries. Thank you. Next. So you can see that the classifications, as mentioned, it spans across from commercial sectors, construction sectors, household sectors, industrial sectors, and public, and also that waste also in some cases be imported because they want to convert it to something useful. So with all these classification and examples of waste, we need to understand their nature, and then we can map the appropriate technologies to convert it to something useful. Thank you. Next. Right. So this slide, I just want to share the ecosystem when the solid waste being generated, the point source, in order for us to have the proper system in managing this waste, is the first important thing is don't generate the waste at all, which is very ideal. And the second point is we need to sort. Once we do the sorting, then the subsequent process is smoother. So in this case, how we manage it, normally the waste is being collected and then it being transported to designatory area, and then from there classifications, if the first step is done properly, then the step number 4 in terms of the recovery and treatment will be made easier. Then those that can't be recycled or can't be converted, then it will be disposed to the landfill. So the challenge is that we have to mitigate these issues upfront, because there's limitations on available land area that you can dispose the unwanted or untreated solid waste material. So there's a quote here that out of the huge amount of waste separations, the recycle rate is still about 25%. So majority of it goes to the landfill. So these are the important things that need to be mitigated in order to have an effective solutions in a way that we can manage the solid waste. Next. Right. So what I'm going to share here is from perspective of technology, which is thermal chemical conversions technology, in which from these technologies, it introduced a high temperature process that enables the breakdowns of the materials that you want to treat, and then it can produce another useful product, be it a solid product, a liquid product, or the syngas product. So one of the aim of the Malaysian government side is to be able to reduce the waste disposal due to landfilling. So there's a target there in which we can see that it has progressed in a positive manner, in which the percentage of landfillings, the waste that been disposed to the landfill has been reduced due to the increase of recycling, and also the treatment of the waste. So in the summary is that technologies can be introduced that help to mitigate this waste disposal problem, which also benefit the environment, because you can reduce the amount of landfill area that which can be reserved for other benefits and purposes. Next. Right. So when we talk about thermal chemical conversion, so among the underpinning technologies, it involves example torrefaction processes in which you can convert the waste to make a value-added solid product, a solid fuel, and also if you want to convert the waste to a liquid product, pyrolysis technologies can be introduced, or liquefactions. And if you want to maximize the waste conversions to gaseous products such as syngas, which is a building block to make other subsequent products, it can be achieved through gasification. So these thermal chemical conversions technologies offers advantages in helping to mitigate these waste conversions issues. So the important thing is that when we have the technologies, we need to be able to optimize it so that we get the best product quality and also giving a positive impact towards the economy. Next. Okay, this slide shows a scenario in Malaysia in which it shows the distributions of the landfill sites in the Peninsular Malaysia. So based on this data, currently we have one waste to energy incinerator plant in Kajang, somewhere this area. And then we have several incinerator plants with various capacity to treat per tons of the waste per day at that locations. So among the location is somewhere in Langkawi, Tioman, Pangkor Island, Cameron Highlands, and Labuan. Next. So I want to share the next slide, our research work related to thermal chemical conversions, which we believe that it can be applied in converting this solid waste to make a value-added products such as gaseous fuels like syngas or biohydrogens and the bio-oil. Next. Okay, so this slide shows our rig here, in which we have proved the workability when we co-gasify biomass and plastic waste mixtures with proper technologies optimizations. We can produce syngas. So these are one of the technologies that can be introduced to convert the solid waste and make a product such as syngas. Next. Another technologies that I want to share that have a potential to convert the solid waste is we can produce this liquid, the bio oil, in which we can co-mix it with agriculture waste, with the plastic waste to boost the calorific values of the liquid product that we can synthesize from it. So using a technology under a supercritical conditions will allow and enable these conversions of the waste to a liquid product. So in this case, bio oil, it has multiple usage. Examples, it can be used as a heating fuel, or if the quality is being upgraded, it can be used as to recover the important chemicals within its compositions. Okay, next. So the way forward from my perspective is that adaptations of technologies in mitigating solid waste to convert it to a useful product provided the whole ecosystem is being in place, it offers a positive path towards mitigating the pollutions problem. Next. So just to share that Malaysia standing, Malaysia is very has introduced many policies and plans to transform and convert the solid waste to value-added materials and mitigate the accumulations of the solid waste through its ag policy is there, and awareness program where concepts of recycling, reduce has been introduced to the public and also to the nations. So this slide shows that how serious our government in putting their effort towards mitigating a solid waste accumulations through positive management policies. Okay, next. Right, so from my view, in order for us to ensure that we can contain and manage this waste that been generated, the strict control mechanism need to be there, and proper designation bins need to be in place so that the public knows that, okay, these are the right place where you can put the face mask, the glove, or the casing where you have your disinfectant in a proper site. And also more efficient waste disposal facilities need to be set up, and awareness and education to the public is also important. Okay, next. And in moving forward, we can see how COVID-19 has changed the way we live, our daily life, So we are moving towards a new norm. So in terms of this solid waste management also, IT also play an important role. Examples maybe right now, the way they collect the waste in the country is just that manually the person just go there and pick up the bin, but through automated technologies, this can be done, and straight away the waste being dumped to the collector van and then being sent to the right place for total waste treatment site. So the new norm need to also be introduced in a way that we handle our waste. And important point is that if you can minimize waste generations, that is the best options. And we also have to think about proper way to manage the waste once it's created, and how can we reduce this waste. Is there any technologies that we can introduce to convert it to something useful? Next. With this, I would like to thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts. Thank you, Bu Akino.
Thank you very much, Ibu Professor Susana, for the presentation. Bu Susana talked a bit about waste system definition and classification in Malaysia, some scenarios for thermochemical conversion, and also case study in the country, and also what's the way forward for the solid waste management system after the pandemic. So we have a few questions already coming in, but for other viewers, you can ask your questions to the speakers through the link in the chat room, and we will bring that up during the Q&A session. Now, moving on to the last speaker of the day, it is the RDI director herself, Ibu Elizabeth Rianawati. Ibu Elizabeth received Aunsit Net Award for her master degree in environmental engineering at the National University of Singapore, and she is currently doing her PhD program. Under her direction, RDI has secured a number of important achievements, building networks with national and international entities and collaborations. She is also involved in a number of research and consultancies in waste management, renewable energy, and disaster risk reduction. For example, stakeholder acceptance behavior on infiltration well and rainwater harvesting system, digital biogas market, and sustainable production of high-quality bio-oil from different agricultural waste. Now today, Ibu Elizabeth will speak about COVID-19 and waste management policy. Ibu Elizabeth, you have 15 minutes.
Thank you, Bu Aquino. Yes. Yeah. Hello, everyone. So thank you again to be here with us and in RDI webinar. Before I start, I want to give a shout out to the intern that helped me prepare my presentation, Dimas Mahardika. So he is from UGM, and UGM is based in Yogyakarta. It's in Central Java. So he's been doing this internship program online. So for those of you who are interested in joining us, please do not hesitate to check our website and contact us directly. So it's not only on waste or water management, but it's also on other topic, also very interesting topics such as urban refugee. Actually, Bu Aquino is the head of research cluster in urban refugee. So, but okay, back to our presentation. If possible, I want to ask you a question first, and then please type in your answer in the YouTube chat. So it's actually on waste management. So I want to ask you like what to do when the old normal of waste management was already overwhelming, and we have to cope with the post-COVID situation. So please type in your response in the chat. So next please, Vincent, I forgot. Next please. Yes, thank you. So policy. Why we have to have policy? So policy is the guidelines and the framework that we needed to achieve the target that we already had set. So the policy makes sure that we don't break the ethic, we safeguarding in every action and program, and also we minimize the risk that is possible to happen and within a program. So policy is very important to make sure that we are on the right trajectory. So we already seen from and heard from Pak Akhil presentation of what pandemic can cause to our environment, positively or negatively. And hopefully with this new set of policy that we are going to suggest to the government, we can lock in the good impact and also minimize the negative impact of pandemic. And we already heard from Prof. Susanna about how technology could reduce the negative impact of pandemic. Okay, next, Vincent, please. Okay, so this is just an example of how to lock the good impact from the new normal. We already know that everyone is already accustomed of working from home. So hopefully in the future, more institutions, more offices, and more maybe government institution also allow the new norm of working from home. So it's not something that is strange anymore, but this is just an example. Then I want to focus more on the waste management. So eliminating the bad impact. We heard how waste to energy technology can help to reduce the unwanted plastic waste that is very detrimental to our ocean, like what Professor Susanna has said. And but it's not enough definitely by using technology, so we need something more. Next, Vincent, please. Okay, so what kind of waste management policy is needed? So this is, I take it from the literature. There's so many suggestions that's already been written in the literature from smart waste management, sustainable. The idea is to make sure that the waste management that is currently being implemented is not just wasted. I'm sorry to use the waste and wasted, because in some cases, I don't know whether this is also happening in Malaysia, Prof. Susanna, but in Indonesia, sometimes we have, when we do a piloting waste to energy technology, it's just not used anymore after several years or several months, even so. Yeah, we have to make sure that it is effective, it is sustainable. But okay, next please. Yes, the question is, with limited budget, which aspect should be prioritized? Of course, we can implement a very high-tech, smart technology or waste to energy, but then later on in my presentation, I will show you just how limited the waste budget is available. Okay, next. So I want to propose that community participation is one of the answer. Next. Okay, so this is the basic of why I say community participation. This is the statistic number of the condition of waste in Indonesia. So this is the number of population, the number of waste volume per year, and also the number of municipalities that have to perform this waste service. And even though there's 514, there are only 400 in landfill, and not all of the landfill are working properly. And Bu Susanna say a recycling rate in Malaysia is only 24%. Well, okay. recycling rate in Indonesia is not that as good. So this is why I feel like community participation in Indonesia need to be enhanced and strengthened. Okay, next. And this is the statistic number for the infectious waste in Indonesia. So it doesn't mean that I suggest that the community should handle the infectious waste from hospital or something like that. But at least as what Professor Susanna has mentioned before, because there are infectious waste coming from the household, there should be a procedure, and the people who are under surveillance because of suspects and being infected by COVID know what to do with the waste that they are discharging. Okay, next. Okay, so how community can or should participate? Like, what type of community participation am I talking about? I'm proposing two, at least in this webinar, is about increasing activity of 3R, reuse, reduce, recycle, and the second one is on tariff, the waste management tariff. It might be unpopular, but maybe we can talk about it later. Okay, next. Yes, so actually I'm quite proud with what Indonesia government has initiated to motivate the people to reuse, reduce, and recycle. So they make this waste bank, and it's very popular. The approach that is being chosen, I think, is relate very well with the community. So it has a tremendous increase, although it only achieved 1.7% of the total waste reduction nationally. But anyway, I think it's one of the most effective waste programs. So we heard with minimum campaign, the increase is already great with the waste bank. And why do I say that we have to increase the community participation is because even the very best technology need a good quality feedstock, which means a good waste separated, a good quality. We all know that if a plastic of an organic waste is already contaminated by food waste or organic waste, is being useless. So yes, that's why a very good community participation for waste separation is crucial for any waste to energy technology. Okay, next. And the second one is on the waste tariff. Actually, in Indonesia, the budget for waste service in municipalities is only 2%, while in developed countries it could as high as 10% of the total budget, municipal budget. And per capita, also Indonesia has lower amount of waste tariff in contrast to the international benchmark. Okay, next. Okay, so this is the report of estimation of how much the OPEX and CAPEX needed, OPEX annually needed to achieve the target that we already set by 2025. Because we're aiming for 30% of waste reduction and 70% of waste treatment. So the total of waste surface, but not cheap, and it requires a huge investment from the government. So again, I say the investment should be sustainable in order it to worth it, and it can only be sustainable if the community produce a very good quality of waste. Okay, next. Okay, and this is my last slide. And this is my last argument also of why I talking about waste tariff. It's because it's already been implemented in Denmark, and the household recycling rate is 46%, and the renewable energy contribution is 30%. And we can see clearly from the graph here that as they increase the tax, so they have this state tax for waste surface. So tax on landfill is $71 per ton per year, and also they have tax on incineration, but no tax on recycled waste. So without I believe that whenever a program is mentioning about economic benefit or economic or about that you have to pay something, it's intrinsically speak to every one of us about the value of environmental benefit. So the government here put a value for the environmental for this amount of money, and it speaks, I think it speaks directly to the citizens without needed more of a lecture or campaign or how precious is the environment, because they have already put the number how much it costs, something like that. And I think the graph speaks for itself. We can see that the amount of waste landfill decrease over the year, pretty much like 40%, which quite big. So yes, I stop my presentation here and I give back to Ibu Aquino. Thank you. So I think we are going to Q&A right now, Bu Aquino. I have a lot of questions for Prof. Susana actually, because because Prof. Susana, I think one of the leading experts in biofuel, and we are very happy and we are very lucky to have you here, Ibu. And I hope we could ask you a lot about how is the progress of biofuel and so on and so forth, and also on waste management, of course.
All right. All right, Ibu Elizabeth, thank you very much for your presentation. I find your presentation is actually very, very interesting because you talk about waste tariff and also about community participation. Waste bank, in fact, was something that I was focusing on during my study almost 1 decade ago, and it's very encouraging to see it's progressing right now.
Oh, wow. Okay. so the question should direct to you, Bu Aquino, instead of me. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much as well for Pa Akil and Bu Susana. All very interesting presentations. And now we have arrived to the Q&A sessions. We have several questions coming in already. And thank you to our wonderful behind the screen team. I've got them on my notes right now. So I want to ask the first question perhaps to Pa Akil first. Pa Akil, there is a question from somebody who doesn't want to be known. Do you think that it is necessary to assess the impact of COVID pandemic in every country? And do you think is that information important for the climate change action or program in each country? Please.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Aquino, for question. So I think it's going to be a good idea actually to do assessment of the COVID-19 impact to the environment in different countries. Since each country maybe has their own environmental problem and there has own characteristic on how they spend their energy and so on. So I think the more data we can collect, the more valid information we can get. And of course, this information will be useful for government to give a recommendation on how to act about the climate change, and also recommendation on how to mitigate the negative impact of COVID-19, such as for the waste management, etc.
Right.
Yeah,
Thank you, Pak Akil.
maybe I add a little bit. Actually, there's one question also, like whether this question, whether this impact will last longer, or it's just a short time. So, yeah, I think it relates to that also, Pak Akil.
Well, actually, it's all depend on the government policy and also the human behavior. But from what we heard from all of the news in the world, nowadays, most of the government, they lift the restriction and they start, or they're resuming their economic activity. So I think actually, the good thing will be last very soon actually. um, and the problem, the air pollution will, back to the normal. Normal means like
Yes.
with the previous before the pandemic. Yeah, so it's kind of a short-term impact of the COVID-19, unless the government and the human behavior change significantly due to this pandemic, like the the lockdown or restriction, travel restriction, and on so on. Maybe we can see the impact of the environment much significantly and longer in the longer periods.
Right. Thank you, Pak Agil. And I think this brings me to the next question. And I want to ask this to Ibu Elizabeth. There is one question from someone who also don't want to be named. Is there any country that could be a benchmark for waste management
Yes,
during
yes.
this pandemic?
I think it's very difficult question.
Mm.
Yeah, I think we have to go back to which country has a very good infectious waste management. Okay, so I think at the moment I don't know any of the country, but as I we all know, like the developed country also already implement a very good the infectious waste management. But we also hear read also some articles, right? Like how the waste piling up in UK and also in US because of the pandemic. So I think every country right now is challenged by this condition.
Right. And I think that's very true. So maybe for the next one, to Ibu Susana, maybe you can speak a little bit from your experience in Malaysia, and this relates to one question that we received from Ruth from Baptist School about the recycling rate in Malaysia, because you mentioned that the rate was about 24%, which is very, very good. And so relating that back to the pandemic situation, yeah, do you think you can share any lessons learned from the successful recycling rate in Malaysia for for waste generated that can be recycled during this pandemic?
Thank you, Bu Aquino. I think the first steps you see in terms of the steps that the government of Malaysia has taken that I've shared, they already introduced a campaign to get the buy-in nationwide, right? Educations, awareness programs. So this thing is important to instill the right norms to the people, and then the consciousness. So if the awareness is being cascaded, and people normally know that if I produce this waste and these are the impact that it will give towards the environment, then that thing will become hindrance of you to throw a waste, right? So you can see the change in terms of the public perceptions, because I reflect back way back 20 years back when I was child, and then now things have changed. So as we go towards change and modernizations, and these inculcations and awareness is there, then that positive attributes you can instill, and then it embrace with you, it's to throw out your as an individual. So means that we want to throw something also, we know that, we are conscious, our conscience tells us don't do that, it's not right, you give a negative impact to others and also the environment. So at the end of the day, it's back to the person's attitude and acceptance. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Bu Susana. Yeah, because I think speaking from my personal experience, I try to do as much recycling as I can. But then during the pandemic, for example, you cannot use your tumbler anymore because the sellers is afraid that it will be infectious. So there are some policies that has been in place to encourage recycling. But then during the pandemic, some of those regulation or encouragement to the public is sort of not stopped, but challenged. So I think that's also perhaps questions to the government in terms of how can we still at least maintain the rate of recycling, right, during the pandemic, but at the same time also kind of still be mindful of our own hygiene. Yeah. And Bu Elizabeth, do you have any comments on this?
Yes. Actually, in Indonesia, we are starting to try to implement the RDF, Ibu Prof. Susana. So how about in Malaysia? Because like Bu Aquino has mentioned before, we recycle something, but the case is Indonesia is sometimes Indonesian is not very encouraged to recycle, because we see that, okay, after recycle is being mixed again or something, still being landfill. But now we are trying to start with the RDF, the refuse device fuel. And and I heard from your presentation that you use incinerators. Can you share a bit about the background of the technology choice?
All right. So yes, expert. When the current technologies that they have installed is the incinerator, incinerations. But if now we know that technology is advancing, right? So when you compare incineration versus to a new technology, examples like gasification, so it can also offer added value from the technology perspective, because that's a different. If you incinerate, you can still produce your CO2, right? So if you gasify it, and then you through process innovations, you convert it straight away to the syngas. So these technology comparisons, will lead to a different product that you get. So like you said to me, when we talk about technology advancement, it can be pushed towards a new technology, example gasification, where you convert everything, to gas, or the byproduct you can get as a less ash material, solid material, or if you manipulate the operating conditions, you can also do at a lower temperature range and you get a bio oil. So with one technologies and with a technical experience, it offers you multiple products. So I think that is how you can make a technologies to be attractive and succeed, they call it, to get something that of values to the industry, from the economic return. So yeah, that's my view.
It's so obvious that you're very covering the aspect of the gasification. We just one last question for me. Sorry, Bu Aquino. So is Malaysia is developing the gasification technology, or is that getting it from other country?
Right now is our technologies that I've shared with you, on site is more on incinerations. So I hope as a researcher and in moving forward, these thoughts of technology advancement will be put in place and be aside. Yeah.
All right, Bu Elizabeth, do you have more questions?
Oh,
Or maybe
sorry.
hold that thought. No, that's fine. Hold that thought. I have a few questions coming in, and many are regarding technology. So I think everyone is very curious about the technology in Malaysia. But for now, I'd like to have one questions from Yani in RDI. And I want to ask this to Pak Akil. What do you think would be the specific expected behavior change during the pandemic for better waste management at a different level? And I think after Pak Akil, maybe Bu Elizabeth and Bu Susana can also add to that.
Sorry, can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, so the question is, what would be the specific expected behavior change during the pandemic so that we can have a better waste management after the pandemic? So it talks about, what should we change individually in terms of, behavior, while incorporating still hygiene practices, but also, still be mindful of the waste that we produced.
Okay, so I think in terms of the waste management behavior during this pandemic, actually it's kind of, maybe actually it's not much different from the previous one, but we have to keep in mind that, we cannot like share, our personal equipment with others, something like that. And also well, it's all depend on personal, actually, I think. I mean, if we can behave like more hygiene, and also we use some kind of personal equipment, so we can keep their own waste, and then we collect it, to, I don't know, like and I really don't know the practical way how to collect our own personal, because anyway, all the waste that we produce every day is going to be end up in the, like the bin or landfill, if we can say in Indonesia, something like that. Maybe other other perspective from Professor Susanna or Elizabeth, please.
Can I contribute here?
Yes, please.
Okay, one of the things that I observed the drastic change, right? Especially in food intake behavior. Like as before the COVID, like we the food order, like Food Panda, so in Malaysia, it's get famous, Food Panda. You start order your food online. So this also will generate their household waste in terms of the packaging. So I can see there's a behavior change when people start ordering packed food, more rather than eat out in the shop. So that's one of obvious change that we observed, okay, due to the COVID pandemic situations.
Yeah, that's very true. I think the packaging of food is very much observed during the pandemic because of the situation where people cannot go everywhere. Bu Elizabeth, maybe you have some suggestions, perhaps related to waste bank?
Waste bank. I think you're entitled to speak on waste bank more than I do.
No, but I mean, I think we observe as well that maybe there are some procedures that needs to be put in place, for the recycling during the pandemic. For example, the, what do you call that? The sanitation of the areas, some certain areas where people can recycle, they can just do a regular sanitation or something like that, or maybe wearing face mask that is reusable or something like that. Okay, so we have some questions coming in about air pollution. So, and this is perhaps from Pak Akil's presentation. Um, okay, one question is about will the decrease of air pollution continue after the pandemic ends with the new normal situation, or do you think this condition will only last temporarily?
Yeah, I think I answered this question before.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, this all depend on the government policy and
All
also the
right.
human behavior.
Right.
But if we, read the news all over the world that nowadays the government start lifting the restriction and also lift the, the lockdown and so on. So they start resuming the human activity like the industry, school, and so on. So I think this air pollution is just last soon. I think so. I mean the
Just
good,
temporary.
yeah, temporarily or short term. So after the human activity resume, I think it's gonna be coming back again the problem.
Even if perhaps there will be some better policies on working from home, for example, from some companies, do you think it will still, it will not make a huge contribution in
Well,
the drop?
actually, the human behavior is just maybe affect like very small small amount of the oil pollution compared to the like like the industry or power plant that produce CO2 emission. So if actually this mostly depend on the government policy. If like they try to shift their the energy from the fossil fuel energy into like the clean energy, maybe it's going to be some uh, progression. But if they're still using the same fossil fuel energy and also just of like I said before that maybe the human activities of course is affecting the air pollution, but if we compare the percentages much lower compared to the like the industry or the power plant and so on. So it's yeah.
Right, right. Interesting. There is one question that I'd like to ask Bu Elizabeth, and I think this relates to what Pakil just said as well. In terms of the policies related to waste management in Indonesia, do you think what kind of policy should be developed for better waste management in this COVID-19 pandemic? And also, what regulations are still lacking in Indonesia?
So yeah, thank you, Bu Akina. I think this is a question that we all been asking about the waste management, how to improve it along the year, because as we see, there has been progress, but slow progress. So let me share you about the story in Bandung City. The Bandung City actually previously changed the management setting and the administrative setting of the waste management. So the municipality privatized the waste service into a company for over a decade or maybe more, but it has been receiving so many a setback in terms of revenue. So they are now segregating the commercialized, the privatized company to serve the waste management is they only take the commercial waste, whereas the government will focus on the household waste. So something like to increase the waste surface, just to make each of the stakeholder involved are motivated. That's why I put emphasis on the economy. The biggest stakeholder in waste is the producer, is that from household. So how to make them motivated? Just try to give them incentive. Of if not incentive, then tax. So, make them have to pay for what they produce is something that being implemented in Nordic country. So in Nordic country, they are even very advanced. They make this system is like either volume based, they have to pay per volume that they discharge, or per weight volume that they discharge. So they have already this system, and I think it motivates the producer to reduce the waste. So yeah, that's my comment.
Thank you, Bu Elizabeth. And I'd like to ask the same thing to Ibu Susana. What about Malaysia? What do you think, Ibu Susana?
I think we don't have, to my knowledge, we don't have like what incentive like Bu Elizabeth mentions in Indonesia, where you are giving the waste bank, something like that. Yeah, because here in Malaysia is more on the household waste is managed by a private company, where they took the waste and then send it to a designated area for it to be treated, recycled, or landfill. So, but in a way that I think like it's good to have a system, like what Bu Elizabeth is suggesting in terms of trading between, okay, if you trade, you make less waste, okay, you get some, benefits, something like that, like a coupon based, then it has no incentive just to get their participations. Okay, so in a way that it might help also to get the buy-in from the people to generate less waste from the household. Yeah.
Thank you, Bu Susana, Bu Elizabeth, and Pak Akil. I think we've come to the end of the Q&A session, but I have one more question from myself to all of you. I reserved the question for myself to the last part. Okay, so as you probably know, some countries, developed countries, have moved towards circular economy. Because there's a pressure, it's a form of pressure for the business sector to be more involved, as you say, Bu Elizabeth, but also to the government to think a bit more, how to say, comprehensive. So how do you think, my question is, how do you think circularity relates to waste management, especially in dealing with waste during the pandemic? Who wants to go first? Bu Elizabeth?
Well, you have to actually give us the cheat question before. Wow, you put it on spot. Anyway, thank you for the question. I think circular economy is one of the biggest trends right now, because we all know the linear economy cannot compete with the ever increasing cost of waste service, right? So it has to be circular as much as it can, something like that. What's the question again? Sorry, I forgot.
The relation between circular economy and waste management.
Okay, previously the benefit of, if there is the benefit of from managing waste, I think it should be divided into all the stakeholders that take action, something like that. That's the circular economy. So I think, yeah, from my perspective, so everyone who is participate are again motivated to do the activity, because it's economy activity. If it's just like cleaning activity, they will not be motivated. That's why I have this point system in my house, so that the children would contribute to the, anyway, sorry. Maybe go to Prof. Susana before I go off track.
Or Pak Akil seems to be ready with his answer. Yeah.
I pass to the expert.
Okay, pass to the expert, Professor Susana.
Okay, if you ask me from my viewpoint, circular economy, so meaning that everything have to go back to the origin source, right? So now, but I believe when we are dealing with waste, the first point is you have to ask, do this process generate waste, right? So then if you can solve that at the first point source, then you don't, in a way that you are not, travel in circles to resolve that matters. So there's a point that I'm trying to say here is that from the waste perspective, maybe the point is that dark point. You don't have to bring it around and you have to manage and circle it back, right?
Yeah. Basically, yes.
Yeah.
Basically, reducing,
Yeah.
reducing what you consume so
Yeah.
that it doesn't become waste. Yeah.
But depend on the stakeholder like the sources. If it comes from industry, okay, the process you cannot avoid from making a byproduct, right? Then that is where the circular economy need to be, practiced in a way that how you manage your byproduct so that the overall ecosystem, will give a balance towards the environment. Yeah. So I have a split opinion on that.
Wow. Okay. Well, maybe one more opinion. This one is on track. Well, that's why government in Indonesia is implementing the RDF because Indonesian community is opposing the incinerators, even though actually we have the regulation. There has been a question on whether we have waste to energy regulation in Indonesia. So we have regulation, but it put, I think some of the people interpret it as put emphasis on this incinerator. So people are opposing that regulation. So that's why we are moving toward the RDF. And the advantage of RDF is that we make the pellet from our organic waste, but we don't put it in incinerator. We put it in cement factory that they already have the combustion engine, so we don't have to make a more investment. So I think it's a type of circular economy, and that is being implemented. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. And so as well for us for answering my surprise question, so that viewers know that we don't cheat behind this behind the screen. Anyway, there are a lot of takeaways from this conversation, but I think I will not provide any conclusion because we will still have to continue this conversation through our research at the Waste Management Working Group for COVID-19 research in RDI. Now, everyone, you are welcome to follow our research progress through RDI social media channels as well as our website. Perhaps you can see it later on your screen. And I hope the discussion today is useful for everyone. Thank you very, very much for all speakers and for all the viewers as well. I would also like to thank our behind the screen team for the wonderful support for the day. Yeah, so I think that's all from me, Akino Tahir, as your host for today. Thank you.
Thank you.